first sounds that I have to make. Will it be there? I was talking about it just the other night at Carnegie Hall.
Frank Sinatra never forgave him. But the real reason had nothing to do with ordinary anger. It was something deeper, colder, and far more personal. Palm Springs, California. Spring, 1962. Frank Sinatra had transformed his estate into a place worthy of a president. Behind the house, workers poured a private helicopter landing pad directly into the desert sand, built for one purpose only, to receive John F. Kennedy. Sinatra added secure phone lines for White House staff, prepared guest cottages for the Secret Service, and redesigned parts of the property around the upcoming visit.
And looking at the audience, I was terrified for about 4 seconds, and then it goes away.
How do you explain that?
Every detail mattered because this was more than hospitality. To Sinatra, it was validation. The boy from Hoboken, once dismissed as a nightclub singer with dangerous connections, was finally being accepted at the highest level in America. The President of the United States was going to stay under his roof. Sinatra saw it as proof that he had crossed the line from celebrity into respectability. Then everything collapsed in a single conversation. Peter Lawford arrived at the house carrying news Sinatra never expected to hear. Lawford was not just another actor. Married to Kennedy's sister, Patricia, he had become the bridge between Hollywood and the White House. Sinatra trusted him like family. Carefully, Lawford explained that the president would not be staying there after all. Kennedy had decided to stay at Bing Crosby's home instead. That name cut deeper than almost anything else could have. Bing Crosby represented the old guard Sinatra had spent years trying to surpass. Crosby was a Republican who had done little for Kennedy's campaign, while Sinatra had worked tirelessly for it. In that moment, Sinatra did not just lose a presidential visit. He lost the image he had dreamed about for years, the photograph of himself standing beside the president at his own home, finally accepted by the establishment that had kept him at a distance for decades. Most people describe this as a simple Hollywood feud. Frank got angry, Peter Lawford got pushed away, and the Rat Pack eventually moved on. But the truth lasted much longer. Frank Sinatra never forgave Peter Lawford. Friends close to both men later admitted the silence between them never healed. They never rebuilt the friendship. They never truly spoke again. And the reason was not ordinary jealousy or betrayal. Sinatra believed Lawford had delivered more than bad news that day. He believed Peter had chosen a side.
You know, I said, Frank, I'm talking. And he would stop and fall on the floor.
You could treat him any way you want.
Anyway.
What Sinatra felt was harder to describe than simple anger. And that is why, out of all the feuds and betrayals across his career, the man he shut out the longest was the man who may have deserved it the least. Because the broken helipad was never just about wounded pride. It became evidence of something deeper. The message Peter Lawford carried into Sinatra's house revealed a side of Frank that many biographers barely noticed. To understand why, you have to understand the two men at the center of this story. Most people already know Frank Sinatra. Peter Lawford is the name history tends to leave behind, but their differences explain everything. Frank Sinatra was born in Hoboken, New Jersey in 1915 to Sicilian immigrant parents. His father ran a tavern and boxed for extra money. His mother was politically connected, fiercely ambitious, and deeply controlling. Sinatra entered the world after a brutal delivery that left forceps scars across his face, neck, and ear. Acne later deepened them. He spent much of his life hiding the left side of his face from cameras, carrying the insecurity long after fame arrived. Then he heard Bing Crosby on the radio. That voice changed everything. Sinatra decided he wanted more than survival. He wanted to become unforgettable. By his early 20s, he was singing in New Jersey clubs. Soon, Tommy Dorsey hired him for the biggest band in America, and almost overnight, Sinatra became a national obsession. Teenage girls screamed at concerts, fainted in packed theaters, and newspapers crowned him the Voice.
Was he really tough guy?
Frank believed he was a tough guy, but he was. He was a boxer when he was a kid.
For a brief stretch in the 1940s, nobody in American music was bigger. Then it all collapsed. His voice weakened. His marriage fell apart during his explosive affair with Ava Gardner. Record executives abandoned him. Movie studios turned away from him. By 1952, Sinatra was nearly finished, borrowing money just to survive. Most stars never return from that kind of fall. Sinatra did. In 1953, he fought for a small role in From Here to Eternity, playing an Italian-American soldier doomed from the beginning. The performance stunned Hollywood. Sinatra won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor and rebuilt his career from the ashes. Sinatra won the Academy Award for From Here to Eternity, and with that single role, his entire career was reborn. By the late 1950s, he had become something America had never fully seen before, a singer who conquered film, a movie star who shaped culture itself. He ruled Las Vegas, recorded the most celebrated albums of his life, and moved through Hollywood with effortless authority. Rich, admired, and endlessly photographed, Sinatra appeared to have everything, but he still wanted more. That was the contradiction at the center of Frank Sinatra. Fame alone had never satisfied him. He had been famous since his 20s. What he truly craved was acceptance from people who measured worth differently. Old money families, political dynasties, men with Ivy League educations and East Coast influence. He wanted to belong in rooms where celebrity meant nothing unless power respected it too. And Sinatra never forgot how far he had traveled to get there. He came from Hoboken, from scars hidden from cameras, from immigrant parents and rough streets. No amount of applause completely erased that insecurity. Then there was Peter Lawford. Lawford was born in London in 1923 into a world Sinatra could only observe from the outside. His father was a decorated British general. His mother moved comfortably through high society circles. Peter grew up surrounded by wealth, status, and important names. He learned early how to charm powerful people and make himself welcome anywhere. Hollywood liked him for the same reason. MGM signed him as a polished young actor with movie star looks and refined manners. He was never considered a legendary talent, but he understood something equally valuable, how to fit into the right rooms. Then in 1954, Lawford married Patricia Kennedy. Suddenly, Peter was no longer simply an actor. He was connected to the Kennedy family, one of the most ambitious political dynasties in America. Patricia's brother, Senator John F. Kennedy, was already being discussed as a future president. Sinatra noticed immediately, because by the late 1950s, Sinatra was building something larger than friendships. He was building influence. Around him gathered a legendary circle known as the Rat Pack. Sinatra led it like a king. Dean Martin brought effortless charm and humor. Sammy Davis Jr. brought extraordinary talent that few entertainers could match. And Peter Lawford brought something none of the others could offer. Sammy Davis Jr. was the undeniable talent of the Rat Pack. He could sing, dance, act, and imitate almost anyone with effortless brilliance. Joey Bishop handled the timing, the jokes, and the rhythm that kept the group sharp on stage. And then there was Peter Lawford. In public photographs, all five men looked inseparable, matching tuxedos, drinks in hand, laughing under the bright lights of Las Vegas. In 1960, they starred together in Ocean's 11, a film that became the perfect symbol of their friendship and swagger during the same year America elected a new president. But behind the glamour, every member of the Rat Pack served a purpose. Dean Martin's role was comfort. He relaxed the room whenever Sinatra's intensity became too heavy. Sammy Davis Jr. brought energy that could rescue any performance. Joey Bishop controlled the pace behind the scenes, making rehearsed material sound spontaneous. And Peter Lawford's role could be summed up in one word: Kennedy. Sinatra understood this immediately. He even gave Lawford the nickname brother-in-law. It sounded affectionate, but it was also accurate. Peter was the bridge connecting Hollywood's most famous entertainers to the family about to take control of the White House. Without Peter, that connection barely existed. That does not mean the friendships were fake. The men genuinely liked each other. They spent nights drinking together, trading stories, protecting each other when scandals erupted. There was real loyalty inside the group. But underneath the laughter, the Rat Pack was also a machine. Each man brought something valuable. Sammy brought talent, Joey brought structure, Dean brought ease, Peter brought access, and everyone understood it. Peter Lawford was not the biggest star in the group. Audiences were not buying tickets at the Sands Hotel because of him. He was not the funniest or the most magnetic performer on stage. What he possessed was something far more useful in Sinatra's eyes. He had the right connections. Peter carried himself with the confidence of someone raised around wealth and influence. He knew how to enter powerful rooms without appearing nervous or impressed. More importantly, he had direct access to the most important political family in America. A single phone call from Peter Lawford could reach John F. Kennedy, and Frank Sinatra knew exactly how valuable that was, because Peter had spent his entire life mastering one skill above all others. Peter Lawford had been raised to understand that usefulness opened doors. In his world, social value mattered almost as much as talent itself. So when Frank Sinatra welcomed him into the Rat Pack, Peter did not arrive as an equal star. He arrived as a connection, and for a while that arrangement worked perfectly. The shows sold out. Movies were produced. Political fundraisers attracted enormous crowds. Hollywood and Washington became linked through private phone calls, parties, and favors. For a brief period, Peter Lawford became one of the most valuable men in entertainment, not because of what he performed, but because of who he could reach. Then came 1962. And that was the year Peter learned what happened when a man stopped being useful. To understand the explosion in Palm Springs, you first have to understand how deeply Sinatra had invested himself in John F. Kennedy's rise to power. In 1960, Kennedy's presidential race against Richard Nixon was incredibly close. Every appearance mattered. Every celebrity endorsement mattered. Sinatra threw himself into the campaign completely. He organized massive fundraisers in Beverly Hills and New York. He rewrote the lyrics to his hit song High Hopes to support Kennedy. He loaned the campaign his private jet and convinced other stars to publicly back the young senator. Whenever Sinatra introduced Kennedy at events, he made him feel less like a politician and more like the future itself. But the relationship became personal too. Through Peter Lawford, Sinatra entered the Kennedy family's private social world. He visited the Kennedy compound in Cape Cod and spent time with John, Robert, and other family members. Hollywood and politics began blending together in ways that later created enormous controversy. One rumor in particular followed Sinatra for years. Reports claimed he introduced Kennedy to Judith Campbell, a Las Vegas woman later connected to organized crime figures in Chicago. The full truth was never proven, but the whispers alone were dangerous, because suddenly Sinatra's world and the White House were becoming difficult to separate. Then Kennedy won the election in November 1960. Sinatra felt he had helped make it happen, and in January 1961, the night before Kennedy's inauguration, Sinatra produced a giant celebrity gala in Washington. The biggest entertainers in America performed for the incoming president, while Sinatra stood at the center of it all, not just as a singer, but as one of the men who helped usher in the Kennedy era. For one extraordinary night, Frank Sinatra stood beside the future president of the United States, while cameras flashed across Washington. The boy from Hoboken had finally entered the world he spent his entire life chasing. To Sinatra, it felt like victory. At 45 years old, he believed he had everything he ever wanted: fame, wealth, influence, and now genuine access to political power. He returned to California convinced the doors around him would never close again, but almost immediately they started to. Robert Kennedy had become Attorney General at just 35 years old. Determined to prove himself, he aggressively targeted organized crime and demanded the Justice Department take it more seriously than ever before. And Frank Sinatra's name kept appearing in FBI files. For years, federal investigators had documented Sinatra's connections to powerful mob figures, especially Chicago boss Sam Giancana and his West Coast associates. Sinatra had socialized with them openly for decades. He performed at their clubs, vacationed beside them, and treated them as part of the world he understood. To Sinatra, those relationships were normal. The entertainment industry, gambling, and organized crime had always overlapped in his world. He did not see himself as a criminal. He saw himself as someone who understood how power really worked behind closed doors. Robert Kennedy saw something very different. From Washington's perspective, Sinatra was becoming a dangerous political liability, a celebrity deeply connected to men the Justice Department wanted to destroy. Then came the California trip in early 1962. The White House informed Sinatra that President Kennedy would stay at his Palm Springs estate during a March visit. Sinatra immediately began preparing the property like it was hosting royalty. Workers built the private helipad behind the house. Extra phone lines were installed for White House communication. Guest cottages were prepared for Secret Service agents. Sinatra treated the visit like a coronation. What he did not realize was that back in Washington, arguments were already happening behind closed doors about whether the president should stay there at all. Robert Kennedy pushed hard against the idea. The FBI files on Sinatra were growing thicker. Reporters were beginning to pay closer attention to Sinatra's friendships and social circle. Staying at his home could create headlines the administration did not want. Quietly, the decision shifted. The president would not stay with Frank Sinatra after all. And like most political decisions, the message itself was delivered softly, privately, almost politely. But for Sinatra, the damage would feel permanent. Years later, another rumor surfaced about why the White House changed its plans. According to disputed accounts, wiretapped conversations and Sinatra's closeness to certain members of the Kennedy family may have added to the concern surrounding him. Historians still argue over those claims, and none were ever fully confirmed. But one fact is certain. By March 1962, the decision had already been made. President Kennedy would not stay at Frank Sinatra's Palm Springs estate. Instead, he would stay at Bing Crosby's home. That created a problem inside the Kennedy circle. Someone had to tell Sinatra. The president was not going to make the call himself. Robert Kennedy had no intention of doing it either. There was only one man close enough to Sinatra to deliver the message face to face, Peter Lawford. And Peter understood immediately how terrible the task was. He knew exactly what Sinatra had built for this visit: the private landing pad, the special phone lines, the guest cottages for Secret Service agents. More importantly, he understood what the visit meant emotionally. This was not simply a canceled stay. To Sinatra, it was the moment he believed he had finally been accepted into America's highest circle of power. Peter also knew there was no gentle way to destroy that dream. Most accounts of what happened next come from witnesses at Sinatra's home and from later biographies written by people who interviewed those present. The exact wording changes slightly depending on the source, but the overall story has remained remarkably consistent. Peter arrived at the house. He delivered the news. Then he gave the official explanation provided by the White House that the president's security team believed Sinatra's property could not be properly protected. Neither man believed it. The Secret Service had already inspected and approved the estate. They had overseen preparations and participated in planning the accommodations. Security had never been the real issue. The real reason had nothing to do with security. Frank Sinatra was no longer considered the kind of man a president could publicly stay with. That was the truth hidden beneath the polite excuses. The same man who helped Kennedy campaign across America organized the inaugural gala, and turned Hollywood into a weapon for the White House, was now being quietly told he was not respectable enough to host the president overnight. According to witnesses, Sinatra did not explode in anger when Peter Lawford delivered the news. He barely argued at all. Instead, he walked outside alone. In the desert heat behind his Palm Springs home stood the brand new helipad he had built for Kennedy's arrival. Sinatra picked up a sledgehammer and began smashing the concrete himself, breaking apart the landing pad piece by piece until the surface prepared for a president became rubble. But the rage was never really about the concrete. It was about what the moment represented. To Sinatra, the country had just delivered a sentence he could never forget. You are close enough to entertain us, campaign for us, and stand beside us in photographs, but you are not truly one of us. The helipad became the only thing Sinatra could physically destroy that day, because the man who carried the message was still standing inside the house. Peter Lawford did not need to raise his voice or break anything himself. He had already delivered the only weapon that mattered, the words. And Sinatra would remember them for the next 22 years. After Palm Springs, there was no dramatic public breakup. Sinatra never held a press conference or announced that Peter was out of the Rat Pack. Something colder happened instead. The phone simply stopped ringing. Peter slowly realized Sinatra was cutting him out of his life piece by piece. Invitations disappeared. Calls stopped coming. Projects quietly changed direction. At the time, the Rat Pack had several movies in development, including a new heist comedy Peter was expected to appear in. After the Palm Springs incident, his role was rewritten and handed to another actor. The replacement made the humiliation impossible to miss. Bing Crosby. Officially, it was just a casting decision. No lawsuits, no public insults, no headlines. But Hollywood understood how power worked. Casting choices were messages. After Palm Springs, the separation between Frank Sinatra and Peter Lawford did not happen in one dramatic explosion. It happened slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. The phone calls from Sinatra's office became less frequent. Invitations to parties disappeared. Film projects moved forward without Peter attached. No public statements were made. Nobody officially announced that he had been pushed out. That was how Hollywood operated. A producer stopped calling, a director cast someone else, a studio executive quietly moved on. Small decisions, made by many different people, slowly added up to the same reality. Peter Lawford was no longer inside the circle. And the deeper problem was this: the connection that made him valuable was collapsing too. His marriage to Patricia Kennedy had already been strained for years. Peter drank heavily, stayed out late, and struggled to live up to the discipline expected by the Kennedy family. Even by Hollywood standards, his personal life had become chaotic. After the Palm Springs incident, the pressure only intensified. The Kennedys were protecting a presidency and a carefully controlled public image. A troubled brother-in-law connected to drinking and scandal was becoming a liability. In 1966, Peter and Patricia divorced. With that divorce, Peter lost the last official bridge tying him to America's most powerful political family. The marriage that had once made him indispensable was gone, and by then, the Kennedy era itself had turned tragic. President Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. Robert Kennedy would be murdered 5 years later. The bright optimism surrounding the family had been replaced by grief and fear. The Kennedy name no longer carried the same glamorous political energy Hollywood once admired. Peter Lawford kept working, but the momentum was gone. He appeared in television guest roles, variety shows, and smaller productions. He never completely disappeared from entertainment, but he never regained the status he held during the Rat Pack years. The man who once stood beside Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. was now becoming a fading reminder of an earlier era. His personal life worsened too. Alcohol turned into dependence. Pills followed. More marriages came and went, none lasting very long. His finances shrank. His health declined faster than it should have. Of course, no single moment caused all of it. Peter's life was complicated long before Palm Springs, but many people close to the story believe that afternoon in March 1962 marked the beginning of his slow fall away from the center of Hollywood power. And then, strangely, something unexpected happened. About a year and a half later, Frank Sinatra finally picked up the phone and called Peter Lawford again. Not to apologize, not to reconcile, but because Sinatra suddenly needed help. December 8, 1963. Lake Tahoe, Nevada. America was still grieving the assassination of President Kennedy just weeks earlier. Snow covered the ground outside Harrah's Lodge, where Sinatra's 19-year-old son, Frank Sinatra Jr., was staying during a performance engagement. Late that night, 2 armed men entered the room. They tied Sinatra Jr. up, forced him outside at gunpoint, drove him across state lines, and held him captive in a house near Los Angeles. Soon afterward, a ransom demand arrived, $240,000. Frank Sinatra received the call in the middle of the night, and despite everything that had happened between them, one of the people he reached out to was Peter Lawford, because underneath all the silence, all the bitterness, and all the years of distance, Sinatra still understood something important. For Frank Sinatra, the kidnapping of his son became the ultimate test of influence. A man who had spent decades building connections to politicians, celebrities, and powerful figures suddenly needed those relationships to deliver real results. He needed the FBI moving quickly. He needed direct access to the Department of Justice, and the Department of Justice was still led by Robert Kennedy. The same Robert Kennedy who had decided, just 18 months earlier, that Sinatra was too dangerous politically to host the president. Sinatra had spent months bitter over that humiliation. But now, none of that mattered. His son's life was at risk, and he needed immediate contact with the Attorney General, not through assistants or lawyers, but directly. There was only one person in Sinatra's life who could make that happen instantly. Peter Lawford, the very man Sinatra had cut out of his world. According to later reports surrounding the kidnapping investigation, Sinatra called Peter without hesitation, and Peter answered without hesitation too. He helped arrange the contact. He used the same Kennedy connection that had once made him valuable inside the Rat Pack. Whatever pain existed between the two men, Peter showed no interest in revenge. In that moment, he focused only on helping Sinatra's son survive. 3 days later, Frank Sinatra Jr. was found alive. The kidnappers were arrested soon afterward, and the FBI closed in quickly on the case. Then, almost immediately, the silence returned. There was no public reconciliation, no emotional reunion, no restored friendship. Sinatra did not welcome Peter back into the Rat Pack or return to the relationship they once had. The phone call happened because Sinatra needed something. Once that need disappeared, so did the connection. For many people, that is the coldest detail in the entire story. During the worst week of Frank Sinatra's life, Peter Lawford was not treated like family or even an old friend. He became what he had always secretly been inside Sinatra's world, a useful contact, a number to call when the situation demanded it. And once the crisis ended, the number was no longer needed. That realization changes the meaning of everything that happened between them. If Sinatra truly hated Peter, he never would have made the call. But if he had forgiven him, the relationship would have continued afterward. Instead, what existed between them was something far more complicated and far less sentimental. Their friendship had always been tied to usefulness. Peter Lawford's tragedy after Palm Springs was not simply that he lost Sinatra's friendship. It was that he slowly lost the thing that made him important in Hollywood altogether. For years, Peter had lived on borrowed importance. He was charming, well-connected, and welcome in powerful rooms because he linked people together. But once the Kennedy connection weakened, the value others saw in him weakened too. Peter Lawford's value in Hollywood had always been tied to connection. He was the man who could introduce actors to politicians, entertainers to power, and Hollywood to Washington. But eventually, those introductions stopped mattering. The Kennedy administration was gone. His marriage to Patricia Kennedy had ended. The political world that once made Peter so important no longer revolved around him. And once that happened, fewer people in Hollywood needed what he offered. He continued acting throughout the 1960s and 1970s, appearing on television shows like Bewitched, The Patty Duke Show, and Fantasy Island. He stayed busy, taking guest roles and smaller film appearances. But there was a difference between working and mattering. Peter Lawford was no longer at the center of anything. Part of that decline may have happened anyway. He was talented and charming, but not the kind of once-in-a-generation performer who could dominate Hollywood forever on talent alone. Charm could keep a career alive. It could not guarantee permanent importance. Still, the speed of his fall was tied directly to what he lost. For years, Peter had represented the connection between glamour and political power. He was Hollywood meets Washington. But after 1962, the Washington side of that identity weakened. After the divorce in 1966, the Kennedy connection disappeared entirely. And after Robert Kennedy's assassination in 1968, the future Peter once symbolized was gone forever. Without those ties, he became increasingly adrift. His drinking, already heavy for years, grew worse. Prescription pills entered the picture, followed by other substances. More marriages followed 2, 3 after Patricia, none lasting very long. Over time, Peter became something Hollywood often creates and then forgets, a man famous mostly for once standing close to greatness. Friends watched him struggle. Some tried to help, others quietly drifted away. By the late 1970s, the damage was visible. He looked much older than he really was. Years of alcohol and substance abuse had worn down the handsome face that once made studios eager to cast him. Yet even then, he never completely stopped working. He still appeared occasionally on television. He still gave interviews, told old Rat Pack stories, and reflected on his years beside Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. And interestingly, when he spoke about Frank Sinatra, there was rarely bitterness in his voice. He talked about him carefully, almost warmly, the way people sometimes speak about someone who closed a door on them long ago and never reopened it. Peter Lawford died on Christmas Eve, 1984, and he was 61 years old. The official cause was cardiac arrest brought on by liver and kidney failure after decades of heavy drinking and substance abuse. His fourth wife remained beside him during his final illness. When Peter Lawford died in 1984, the headlines were respectful but restrained. Most obituaries remembered him as a Rat Pack member, John F. Kennedy's former brother-in-law, and a Hollywood actor who once stood close to power. That was the strange sadness of his ending. The man who had shared stages with Frank Sinatra, moved through the White House circle, and helped connect Hollywood to American politics was ultimately remembered more for the famous people around him than for himself. But the real tragedy was deeper than that. Peter Lawford was not destroyed by one enemy or one betrayal. He was shaped by a system that taught him his value came from proximity, from knowing powerful people, introducing the right names, and opening the right doors. As long as those connections mattered, Peter mattered too. But once the people around him stopped needing those connections, his role quietly disappeared. He was left carrying a kind of social importance Hollywood no longer had use for. Peter Lawford lost the room, and he never truly found his way back inside it. Which brings us back to the central question in this story. Why did Frank Sinatra never forgive him? The simplest explanation is humiliation. Peter delivered devastating news, and Sinatra could never move past it. That explanation is partly true, but it does not fully explain the decades of silence that followed. Sinatra forgave many people throughout his life who hurt him far more directly: former lovers, journalists, even men connected to legal trouble and public embarrassment. Peter Lawford never publicly insulted Sinatra. He never betrayed a secret or attacked him personally. He simply carried a message. So the deeper issue was never what Peter did. It was what Peter represented. Because on that afternoon in Palm Springs, Peter Lawford forced Sinatra to confront something he had spent his entire life trying not to believe. That no matter how many records he sold, awards he won, or movies he starred in, there were still rooms in America where he would never fully belong. He could entertain powerful people. He could raise money for them. He could campaign beside them and help elect them. But when it came time for the President of the United States to choose where he would privately sleep, the final decision revealed the truth Sinatra could never forget. He was still being kept at a distance. That was the wound beneath everything else. The canceled visit was not just political embarrassment. To Sinatra, it confirmed a fear that had followed him since childhood, that no matter how successful he became, some people would always see him as the scarred kid from Hoboken with dangerous friends. Frank Sinatra had been allowed close to power, but not fully inside it. He could sing at the door of the room. He could campaign for the people inside it. He could even help them win elections. But when the time came for the President of the United States to decide whose home he would privately stay in, the choice was someone else. That was not simple anger. That was humiliation. And humiliation works differently than anger. Anger gives you a clear enemy. Humiliation gives you a painful truth about yourself, one nobody openly admits to saying aloud. No one in the Kennedy family directly told Sinatra he was not respectable enough. President Kennedy never said it. Robert Kennedy never said it. Bing Crosby certainly never said it. Even Peter Lawford did not create the message he delivered. But Sinatra heard the meaning anyway. For all his fame, awards, films, and political influence, there were still limits to where America's elite would allow him to belong. The Palm Springs decision exposed that limit in the most public and personal way possible, and Sinatra had nowhere safe to place the shame that came with it. He could not attack the president. Kennedy was untouchable, and after his assassination in 1963, he became even more untouchable in the eyes of history. He could not attack Robert Kennedy, the Attorney General of the United States, and attacking Bing Crosby would only make Sinatra appear bitter and small. But Peter Lawford stood directly in front of him. Peter had carried the message into the house. He was the only person in the entire chain of events Sinatra could realistically cut out of his life without consequences. So that is what he did, not because Peter deserved the punishment most, but because he was the only available target. That is what makes this story darker than a simple feud. It is not really about hatred at all. It is about what powerful people sometimes do with shame when they cannot fight the source of it. They place it onto the nearest person standing in the room when their world suddenly becomes smaller. For the next 22 years, Frank Sinatra never forgave Peter Lawford, not truly because of the message itself, but because Peter became permanently connected to the humiliation Sinatra could never erase from his mind. Peter was the man standing in the doorway when the door quietly closed, and Sinatra could never forgive the doorway. Frank Sinatra died in Los Angeles on May 14, 1998, at the age of 82. America mourned him as one of the defining entertainers of the 20th century. The Empire State Building glowed blue in his honor. Las Vegas dimmed its lights. Radio stations filled entire nights with his music. Peter Lawford had died 14 years earlier, far more quietly. His passing appeared in newspapers, but it did not stop the country. The two men were never equal in fame or legacy, but both of their lives were permanently shaped by one afternoon in Palm Springs in 1962. And even now, decades later, the story still echoes through the way history remembers them. Frank Sinatra kept the legend. Peter Lawford became part of the wound hidden underneath it. Frank Sinatra kept the legend. He kept the music, the films, the awards, and the glowing obituaries. Airports carried his name. Las Vegas treated him like royalty long after his death. America chose the version of Sinatra it wanted to remember, the voice, the swagger, the icon standing beneath the spotlight. The Kennedy family kept the power. Their presidency lasted barely 1,000 days, yet the mythology survived for generations. Their triumphs and tragedies became woven into the American story itself. Even now, the Kennedy name still feels tied to a vanished era of glamour, ambition, and political possibility. Bing Crosby kept the visit. He kept the photograph Sinatra had spent months preparing for, President Kennedy arriving at his Palm Desert home in March of 1962. Crosby remained what he had always been, safe, respected, dependable, the country's reliable entertainer. And Peter Lawford kept the message. He carried it into Sinatra's house. He delivered it. And in many ways, he spent the rest of his life carrying the consequences of it. That is the quiet tragedy at the center of this story. Peter became the man history remembered as the messenger who walked into a friend's home and informed him that the world had decided he still did not fully belong. He paid for that moment while he was alive through the shrinking career, the fading invitations, the distance that never healed. And even after death, he kept paying for it. The smaller funeral, the shorter obituary, the lesser place in cultural memory. Because the helipad in Palm Springs was never really about concrete. It was about the photograph that never got taken, the visit that never happened. The proof Frank Sinatra believed would finally erase the line between the world he came from and the world he desperately wanted to enter. But the line remained. One quiet political decision in Washington drew it permanently, and Peter Lawford happened to be standing in the room when it happened. That is why Sinatra never forgave him, not because Peter betrayed him, not because Peter hated him, but because Peter became forever attached to the humiliation Sinatra could not bear to face directly. Anger fades. Humiliation lingers. Anger has a target and eventually burns out. Humiliation settles inside a person and stays there for years, quietly searching for somewhere to live. For Frank Sinatra, it lived in the memory of one afternoon in Palm Springs. The landing pad had been built for a president. The president never came. And the man who explained why became the one man Sinatra could never truly let back into his life. If you have ever been forced to deliver terrible news you did not create, if you have ever walked into a room carrying words that instantly change the atmosphere around you, then you probably understand something about what Peter Lawford carried for the rest of his life. Some doors do not slam shut. They close softly, and sometimes they never open again. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below letting us know which Hollywood story we should uncover next. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.